a busy time in sports. Some would call it the best time of the year. Depends on who you are. Not as good as it would be if the Mountaineers were in the playoff. We are not. We're on the outside looking in. But looking in, you have I Also Hate Pitt, a.k.a. Brandon Phoenix. That's me, with my brother and co-host.
Jay Fiend. Jeremy, I'm here as well.
And we want to talk about what you want to talk about, the playoffs. It's going to be an all-SEC affair. How do you feel about that? There are people who think it's rigged. There's some people who think nobody's going to watch. I'm all about good football. And for me, I felt like these playoff games were good football, especially the Rose Bowl. You could not ask for more. Jeremy, what did you think about the Rose Bowl?
Oh, man, incredibly entertaining. If you love sports, that's the thing. Even if you don't like college football, even if you venture into other sports, if you like sports, period, and you turn on that game was back and forth. It was high energy. You could feel the tension at the granddaddy of them all. Like you could just feel the moment. And that is what sports is in a nutshell. That is why you watch the game, for those moments, for those feelings. And it was an incredible game. It didn't disappoint at all.
I really thought Kirby Smart showed his pedigree. Down 31 to 17 at halftime to a prolific offense that was averaging 9.2 yards per play, I believe, in the first half. And they didn't panic. The Dogs didn't buckle. They adjusted their game plan. They came out focused, and they made the game about them. They ran the ball down Oklahoma's throat. That's something that you predicted. That's something that so many people predicted. I didn't think it would be enough to keep up with Baker and that offense, but it was. And when it really mattered, when it got to crunch time, I felt like Lincoln Riley and Baker Mayfield and all the swashbuckling swagger stopped. I felt like they got scared. I felt like they played scared, and I felt like you could see the end result. That wheel route on 3rd and 2 late in the game, it's not a play that you think Lincoln Riley would typically call. You know my feelings, 3rd and short with a mobile quarterback, make it a play, run pass option, give him something where if he doesn't have what he wants on his first option, he can take off and run. The genius of Lincoln Riley, I tweeted about it in the first half. It wasn't there wasn't there in the second half. And I felt like Kirby Smart really proved who and what he is, and that Georgia made the right hire. First of all, made the right fire, getting rid of Mark Richt, who finished the season 0-3, including a loss to Pitt and to Wisconsin, and then hiring Kirby Smart out of that Nick Saban coaching tree.
I think it kind of reminded me of the Florida State-Auburn game a few years ago, where because Florida State doesn't play the SEC and didn't see that kind of caliber of team, I think the first half Auburn kind of took control. Once Florida State and its pedigree and its speed got used to what was going on, they came out in the second half and they won the game. Don't undersell what Oklahoma did to Georgia's defense. We could talk about how great and ruthless Georgia's defense is. And I understand the second half, they shut them down 4.2 yards a play, which is good only when you look in comparison to the first half.
Yeah.
But the point is, Oklahoma did everything. Anybody who thought Oklahoma was going to win because they were going to score too many were almost right, because they were scoring at will. Georgia slowed them down. Doesn't change the fact that they went over. How many points did they have? But what I love is the fact that me and you haven't talked about this, and yet we're on the exact same page. And anybody who watched that, that's exactly what happened in the ending of the fourth quarter in overtime. When you talk about Lincoln Riley and you talk about Baker Mayfield, let's be for real. Lincoln, I do believe he's a genius. Baker, best quarterback in the country, best player in the country. The kid is amazing. But what we saw from Lincoln Riley down the stretch and Baker made me feel like I feel like they were playing not to lose. I feel like they shrunk back. The moment was too big. This was the first time all year that Lincoln Riley looked like a first-year head coach.
I agree. Totally
Think about
agree.
it. They could have put it away. They were up 7 points. They had like 3 drives and they did nothing. But more importantly, I felt like they didn't really try anything. They played not to lose. Then you get to that overtime and they're steadily running the ball. Like I heard somebody say earlier, I can't remember who it was, but they said nobody's going to fault you, Lincoln Riley, for throwing the ball with your quarterback who's a Heisman. Even if he throws an interception, they're not going to fault you because of what you've done all year. But I felt like Georgia kicks a field goal. I thought game was over. I thought they would come out with something. So And if you watched them, they were just scared. They were in the moment, the first time in the moment. And I feel like I want to put it more on Lincoln Riley because I feel like he's the one who got conservative. He's the one who the pressure got to. Doesn't mean he's not great. Doesn't mean he's not going to be back. But definitely it showed through for the first time all year in the biggest moment. But then again, they were playing an elite team.
Yeah, and I don't want to take credit from Georgia because I feel like their defensive adjustments cannot be overstated. I feel like the adjustments they made need to be recognized to slow that offense down, something that nobody's been able to do all year. And they've played good defenses. They played Ohio State in Columbus, and they were able to do what they wanted. And Georgia found a way.
Even though, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, and I get you're giving credit to Georgia. And I understand what they did in the second half. Ohio State's defense played better against Georgia. I mean, against Oklahoma. They gave up 31 points, Brandon, the whole game. Like I said, we look back and we like, man, Ohio State got trounced at home. Now we're looking back like, man, that defense held them to 31 points.
Yeah.
The whole game.
Yeah, that's funny.
So anyways, and I agree with you 100%. The adjustments that were made, I think Baker had 96 yards or something under 100 the second half for throwing the ball. So you're absolutely right. The defense made adjustments, and you can see in the line of scrimmage, like we always say in the trenches, Georgia took over.
That's where it was.
So you're right.
And that's against a good Oklahoma offensive line, probably the best offensive line in the country. And to watch Baker have to just take the L, to watch Baker, to have his career end that way, to listen to that linebacker from Georgia yell at him, humble yourself. I ate it up, man. I found myself in moments rooting for the Big 12, but in those moments, I ate it up. And I'm not going to front. Everybody knows how we feel about Baker Mayfield. Best player in the country, best quarterback in the country. Can't stand him.
Now, what I did like, let me just say what I did like, though, and I'll say this quickly. Thing I didn't like, of course, again, he comes in the game and he's holding the pretender sign.
Of course.
Baker. That's what he does. He's warming up on the Georgia side of the field where the receivers go through. That's what they said made him mad to begin with. But what I do like is if you're going to be arrogant and if you're going to say the stuff when you win, I want to see what you say when you lose. Cam Newton went to after the Super Bowl, didn't respond to reporters. What I like about Baker is he faced them all. What I like about Baker is he faced them all, and what he said, they can say what they want. They won the game. I like that. I'm sorry.
I respect it. I respect it.
It's all about if you dish it out, you better be able to take it. And right there, it looked like Baker could take it. Don't get me wrong. The whole game, Brandon, I promise you, I couldn't make up my mind. At one moment, I'm like, let's go. Lincoln Riley.
Same
Big
thing.
12, eat them up. Yeah, Big 12 ain't got no defense, And then the next moment, I'm like, nah, run it down their throat, man. I couldn't. The whole game, I couldn't figure out who I wanted to win, even in overtime, because I ended up listening to it. I was out. I ended up listening to it. And he said, the kick is up, and literally the ball's in the air. And I'm like, I don't know if I wanted to be good or not. The whole game. But I enjoy it. I love watching the game where I can just enjoy the game. And I enjoyed it. I did.
I feel like the Bama-Clemson game had no chance of living up to what the Rose Bowl was. And everybody knew it the moment the Rose Bowl was over. There was no way Bama-Clemson 3 was going to live up to what we had already what we had just witnessed.
Just witnessed, yep.
And sure enough, it wasn't. It was classic Nick Saban football.
Yeah, if you're looking for exciting stuff, that was not the game for you. Personally, I enjoyed it because I like seeing people at the highest level and these two coaches going back and forth. And for me, seeing Alabama being able to do something they have not done, and which is really to slow down Clemson, for me, that game was, I'm not going to say exciting, but I guess I did enjoy watching the greatness of a squad. And I was really surprised by the way they completely shut them down. I know people say it was going to be a low-scoring game, but I don't think anybody tuning in thought 6 points.
Well,
that's impressive. That's impressive to me.
As I saw somebody tweet, they said there is nothing more dangerous than a Nick Saban team with something to prove. And we saw that. And you also saw the health. Bama
But not to cut you off, you say that, but I think that the whole country was at a point. And maybe not the whole country, just me. Maybe I was at a point of saying the same thing. Dabo's group is on that level. Dabo has got his team that it doesn't matter if they're angry or not. They've showed them 2 years in a row, head to head. It doesn't matter. And we talk about recruiting, getting the big boys. Clemson has done it. So that's the reason why the game was so big, because you talk about the passing of the torch. That's what that game was. It was solidifying. I know they've met 3 times. And what we found out is, nope, it's still Saban's world.
Well, Saban's had the number 1 class, 7 years in a row? Clemson has not. Clemson does not recruit like Alabama. They don't. No,
nobody does.
Ohio State comes the closest, but nobody recruits like Bama. And what you saw last night, or what we saw in that playoff game, what we saw in Bama Clemson 3 is the absence of Deshaun Watson. That's what we saw.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what we saw. We saw probably the best player in college football. Even though Lamar Jackson won the Heisman last year, Deshaun Watson probably was the best player in college football. He was a legitimate NFL MVP candidate this year till he hurt himself. We saw the absence of Deshaun Watson. What would happen before is Bama could game plan, Bama could be in position, and then Deshaun Watson could turn water into wine. This year, Kelly Bryant is not ready for that yet. He's not there. He's not there yet.
I will also say a big thing was this is the first time they've played with 3 weeks off to prepare. Every other time it's been a week off. You just come out of a game, you prepared hardcore for, you're a little beat up. Now you get a week to prepare for Clemson. Finally, Saban had 3 or 4 weeks, guys getting healthy and put his whole soul into Clemson. Did that make a difference? One thing that Lane Kiffin said traditionally Saban would practice really hard on certain days. In the last few college football playoffs, he's found out how his team has been tired near the end of games. So, being a great coach that he is, he adjusted and cut some practices. Once again, another big thing and a good adjustment from a great coach.
So who you got? Roll Tide or go Dogs?
Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
And it's
Nick Saban. Nick Saban doesn't lose to his assistants. He's undefeated against former assistants. So Kirby Smart's in trouble that way. It's going to be interesting to see him try to stop Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. Those boys can run. Jake from State Farm is not afraid, even though he's a freshman. I just don't think he's going to be able to handle the moment. This is something Jalen Hurts has already seen, even though he's just a sophomore. And it's tough. Go ahead. I just think Bama's better in the trenches, both sides, to be honest. I just think Bama wins.
Yeah, I think it's tough coming off a game where you had a cupcake on defense, Oklahoma, you did whatever you wanted. This is going to be a completely different game. Can they switch gears? Granted, they played in the SEC. Can they switch gears? I think they can. I still think Bama would win. For me, after these games took place, what was more overwhelming, not just the Rose Bowl was incredible, but also, all right, so I walk into work, and I'm talking to my boss, and I'm like, oh, you catch that Bama game? And he's like, didn't watch it. Didn't watch a second of it. And I was thinking, what? Like, I was like, oh, you hate Bama? He's like, no, I don't believe in the process. Like, you need, so-and-so teams to get in. They didn't deserve to be in. And what hit me is there's a large section of this country that is not supporting Bama or doesn't like Bama or doesn't like the SEC for reasons that we know. It's either the SEC bias they don't like. Maybe it's obviously it's the winning that Bama has and they're just tired of it. They want to see somebody new, or they feel like Bama shouldn't have been in the first place. But I wasn't really ready to I didn't expect to hear, like, I keep seeing it everywhere. People talk about Bama, and I kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I don't know why. I shouldn't have, but it did.
I think that there are plenty of people who think Bama shouldn't have been in. Ohio State beating USC made people think Ohio gave credence to Ohio State being in. I don't think it does. You got to remember, USC barely beat Texas. USC wasn't that good of a team. The Pac-12 is terrible. 1-8 in bowl games, I believe it was. And the only bowl game they won was against West Virginia without our starting quarterback, without our starting running back, without our starting right guard, without our starting left tackle, in the heart of Dallas Bowl. So the results of those games, they don't mean anything to me. It doesn't tell me Ohio State should be in it. And Bama winning, if you didn't think Bama should have been in, Bama winning didn't prove that they should be in. Because to me, the process comes before the results. The
process comes before the result. But I will say, everybody else, when Ohio State won that national championship, they said, we rest our case. They won that.
Yeah, and everybody
said they rest. I didn't buy it either. I'm just saying, for those same people who are now on the flip side talking about SEC bias, whoa. Your credentials was in the national championship. Bama's about to do that. Therefore, using what you used just a few years ago and that you supported, that if you win it, it proves your point. What are you talking about?
Now,
one thing I do like. is Ryan Russillo tweeted. He said, the thing lost in the Bama SEC haters crowd is that none of them seem to acknowledge that Bama destroyed a Clemson team that they all loved. It's like they missed the fact that every Clemson this and Clemson that and Clemson blah, blah, blah. And everybody was on. I didn't hear one person saying Clemson was overrated or Clemson was fake. Nobody questioned Clemson. They were number one outright. Everybody was on that bandwagon. I heard so many people pick Clemson, and Alabama didn't beat them. They destroyed them.
They pummeled them. They pummeled them. No, I agree. I mean, listen, I get there is an SEC bias. There is an ESPN SEC bias. There is.
I agree.
The SEC is top heavy, like all conferences, but it's especially top heavy more than any other conference. And there's fatigue.
But I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but what are you going to say now? Like, okay, I understand the top heavy. I understand the other teams aren't as strong. You can say all that. You can't say anything to a team who's won 8 of the last 14 national championships. Excuse me, it's an all SEC championship, 9 of the last 15. You can't say anything to a conference that's won 9 of 15 national championships.
But there are people who will tell you that Oklahoma State should have been in the national championship over LSU, and that Oklahoma State could have spread Alabama out and beat them the way that Oklahoma did with Trevor Knight in the Sugar Bowl. There are people who will tell you that this year Ohio State should get in and Ohio State would have beaten Clemson, blah, blah, blah. There are people who will tell you that the table gets set for the SEC in a way that it doesn't get set for other people. I'm not necessarily agreeing with that, but I do think that there's a legitimate bias in the way that the announcers talk, in the way that the analysts analyze. I do think that there's a bias. What I think is most interesting is the University of Central Florida's claim to a national championship.
Everybody can claim whatever they want. Everybody's going to have an issue, which brings us to the next issue.
Can the Central Florida Golden Knights claim a national championship?
If this was 1963, UCF's records books would say national championship, and it wouldn't be disputed. Right now, they'd have a national championship in if this were 1963, and you could just call whatever you want. This is not 1963 UCF. I support the Black Knights. I think you're great, and I also
called them the Golden Knights. My bad.
I also feel like, you beat Auburn, which is huge feather in your cap. When they talk about conferences, the big thing about conferences is week after week after week playing big teams that you can lose at any moment. That's huge. You got to prepare. But who cares? You won all your games. You won undefeated. You look good. You beat the big boys. Congratulations. Life's not fair. That's my answer. Life's not fair.
Well, they're going to have a parade. They're going to hang a banner. They're going to pay their this is what, to me, this is where you put your money where your mouth is. They're going to pay their coaches the national championship bonuses that are in their contracts.
Good job. And good job.
Nothing but respect for the athletic director at the University of Central Florida. They're losing a really, really good coach in Scott Frost. It'll be very interesting to see what he can do at Nebraska. I think that Nebraska's issues are more institutional than they are personnel. I think it has less to do with who the coach is and more to do with who and what Nebraska is. Now, that said, the Knights were 0-12, 2 years ago? So
yeah, that's the big thing. Yeah, the turnaround.
We'll have to wait.
Look, I don't want people to take it that I'm hating on them. Hats off to UCF for having a great year. But in the end, you give yourself the national championship. That's nice of you. No record books are ever going to reflect that.
I don't care. Nice I don't care what people do. I don't care. Who cares? Have fun. I've
been thinking about this for a while. I don't know why it irritates me a little bit, and I don't know why.
Because
I have nothing against them giving themselves a national championship and them having a parade and then everybody kind of be on board with it. But I feel like they're kind of on board with it because it's Alabama who's about to win another one.
I think it's because people are on board with it because nobody takes them seriously, Jeremy. That's what it is.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
If this was a Power 5 team, so let's say Wisconsin somehow had gone undefeated and got left out of the playoff and was claiming a national championship, this would be a very different conversation. Very different conversation. There'd be a lot less smiling, a lot less,
Official would be an official announcement from college football.
Yeah. Which leads us to a next question. Should college football playoff expand?
You know what? Me and you had this conversation. You said, how do you feel about the 4? You okay with the 4? I said, yeah, I'm okay with the 4. Not anymore. I was thinking about it, and I think I have the perfect setup I feel everybody feels they have the perfect setup.
Everybody's got
I
the
feel
perfect
like
setup.
you go 8 teams, and this is the reason why I say you go 8 teams. You get the 5 Power 5 conferences champions in 5 locked in. You win it, you're in 5. Then you get one spot to
Group of
one of
5.
the other, group of 5. Whoever's the best of the group of 5 gets in. So now you handle the small teams and the big teams. Then you have 2 at-large bids. The 2 at-large bids are what I call the cheating bid. The cheating bids. Where now, if you're the committee, you can put your Ohio State or Notre Dame or Texas or USC because they are going to do that with the at-large bid. That's your 8. 5 Power 5 conference champions, 2 at-larges, 2 cheats, and one of the small schools.
I like the 4. Do you know why I like the 4?
Controversy.
Our show is a lot more fun when we can argue about who should have been in. Our show is a lot more fun when UCF is hanging banners that they don't actually get to claim. Our show is a lot more fun when people are livid and saying they're not going to watch games because they think it's rigged. And when there's just 4, you guarantee that a Power 5 conference gets left out. You guarantee that you don't guarantee, but you put a good chance that a blue blood gets left out. Like this year was Ohio State. When that happens, it's so much more fun on the radio. It's so much more fun on television. It's so much more fun in the newspaper if there's anybody you can find who's still reading them. That is what I like about the 4. And I used to not feel this way. But now I think I'm older and it just doesn't mean as much to me. I feel like people get cheated every day. People get ripped off every day.
And survive the shots.
Survive the shots. That's what 50 Cent said. Eye for an eye, survive the shot to die. And that's real life. And I feel like sports shouldn't be any different. Put 4 and give us 4. And you can change the formula, how you figure that out. I'd be okay if it was a BCS. They gave us 4. You got to have a playoff. It's way more fun, but I'm okay with the 4. And bring all the hate. I'm ready for all the hate because I know everybody's going to be mad at that. 4, I said it. I'm okay with 4.
People who hate Alabama, I understand why you hate Alabama, but when you watch them play Clemson, you can yell they shouldn't have been in. When you watch them destroy the team that you felt was the best team in the country by far, stop it.
Yeah, like I said, to me, the process comes before the results. Either Alabama deserved to be in or they didn't. And winning that game doesn't prove anything to me. It proves because I don't feel like anybody was saying Alabama wasn't good enough, Jeremy. Everybody's arguing.
One thing I'll say is when
everyone's argument was that their resume wasn't good enough. No one argued that Alabama wasn't good enough to be in the top 4. Who said they didn't have the talent?
But here's one thing what just hit me. People will talk about in the NCAA tournament or even college football. If you lose your starting quarterback and he doesn't play for one game, and they'll say put an asterisk beside it, their starting quarterback didn't play. What you know what I mean? So like even in seeding NCAA tournament or even college football, if you lose but your starting quarterback doesn't play, everybody acknowledges that. Alabama didn't have 3 or so linebackers who are all everything linebackers. So that one loss at the end of the game, why did anybody say that? Why did anybody say, well,
people did say it. People did say that. They said that this Alabama team is not the same because the injuries took their toll.
But they didn't say they deserve to be in because of it. They just said, and now you get your quarterback / linebackers back, and did you see what they did?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I just process before results for me. But hey, we'll let you guys have at it. Let us know what you think in the comments. You always do. We appreciate it. Please rate us, review us. If you're on Twitter or if you're on Facebook, rate us, review us. It helps us to grow and expand. It helps basically to promote our show. Same thing on iTunes, Podbean. Any comments, any suggestions, we love it. We love it, we love it, we love it. If we said something you didn't like, something maybe that made you upset, please do not forget we also hate Pitt.